This Guy's Garage. Like and subscribe.
About the 5 MPs who had traveled to London on a very lavish trip that was sponsored by external entities. Now, as we discussed already, their flights, their hotels, the very oddly expensive Uber bills, and $6,000 dinners were paid for by Canadians for Affordable Energy, with an exception of MP John Williamson, who in 2016 founded that organization that paid for these MPs. His travel to London was paid for by a Hungarian think tank. So obviously a lot of questions arise with this. Do you think that this passes the sniff test, first and foremost, in terms of, like what an MP should logically be doing and be accepting?
Who are you directing?
I refer that to Mr. von Finkenstein, but also Monsieur Dion, if you have any comments.
First of all, you catch me unaware. I don't know anything about the situation that you're talking about. So I'm sorry, I cannot answer the question.
Okay, well, Monsieur Dion?
Nor do I. I frankly don't recall the trip you're talking about. I don't know what year it may have taken place in. It was published, I guess, in the sponsored travel list, published on March 31st.
It's also been quite in the media as well, so I'm actually quite surprised people of your stature and your offices would not know of something.
I've stopped reading those articles because sponsored travel are perfectly acceptable under the code. So that's what Parliament decided several years ago. So any criticism of sponsored travel it's a waste of time, because it's declared to be perfectly acceptable in the code governing the conduct of MPs. So that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So maybe I will recap it for you, and I would love for your input as to if this was a scenario that was presented to you, what would you think about it? So there's 5 Conservative MPs who took a lavish trip to London in June. The MPs on the trip were John Williamson, Stephen Ellis, Philip Lawrence, Rosemary Falk, and Shannon Stubbs. Included in their expenses were $600 bottles of champagne, porterhouse steaks, Chateaubriand smoked salmon, which cost over $6,200 for one night out for dinner. And the expenses also included a $360 Uber ride. Now, their expenses, their travel was paid for by an organization created by one of the MPs who was on this trip with them, except that specific MP's bills were paid by a Hungarian think tank. So when you see a scenario like that, based on your expertise and your experience in your offices, what would be some of the flags that would be raised by you?
Well, first of all, I don't answer hypothetical questions. Present me with facts and I'll make a ruling. Without that, I can't. Obviously, the way you present them and the way it would seem to smell. But as I say, it was your presentation. I don't know the actual fact, etc. But as my predecessor entitled, so rightly put it, the Act specifically allows for sponsored travel. And so therefore, if there's a situation, you have to compare the actual facts against the provisions of the law and make sure they have been complied with. And that's all I would, if this came up now, I would exactly do that. I would look at the facts and make sure that whatever provisions there are in the code that are pertinent to the situation have been complied with.
And I would add, Mr. Chair, that there is one other relevant consideration, is that the office only gets notified about sponsored travel way after the fact. So we are not consulted. We learn months and months after the trip has been completed. And we basically publish what was declared to us. We have no role in judging or in saying anything about sponsored travel, but to publish so that the political process can take over as it is now.
So I'm actually quite, I'm surprised that neither of you have heard of this, and that that the facts that I've presented are actually not hypothetical. They are real, and this would have been presented to you in the case of sponsored travel. But I will leave that where it may. Maybe I'll ask you, what is your view on foreign entities providing dollars to Canadian members of Parliament to the level of extreme lavish trips, and its impact on our democracy here? I know we've had a whole bunch of conversations about foreign interference and the interference of foreign entities on Canadian democracy. I would love your viewpoint on that.
You know, obviously, like everybody else, I think that foreign actors playing on the Canadian scenes is something that shouldn't happen, and should be restrained as much as we can. But I am bound to apply a law, and you can only look at that law and apply the powers that law gives me and enforce those provisions. If you feel they're not strong enough, in which you're not alone, lots of people feel they obviously should be changed. But at the moment, we have the provisions there, and we enforce them as much as we can. If you think they're not strong enough, then it's up to you as parliamentarians to make them better.
Thank you, sir. How many members of the Liberal government did you find guilty of breaking our ethics laws, our Ethics Act?
I never counted them, to tell you the truth. I've heard references to 4 or 5, but I never actually, recently, I don't know, but it's 4 or 5. Yeah.
Okay, so let's go through them. We had the Prime Minister in the Trudeau Report 1. That was with respect to the trip to Bell's Cay. Yeah. We had
Mary Dawson's report, not mine, but it's still on the list.
Yeah. We had. We're going to still count them as part of this government, even under the previous commissioner. Same Prime Minister. The Trudeau Report 2, which was with respect to the SNC-Lavalin scandal, again. We had the then Fisheries Minister, I believe, Dominic LeBlanc, with the LeBlanc Report, clam scam, I think it was called. We had the Ng Report. That was the contract to a bestie of the small business minister, and then we had the Fergus Report. So we had five instances with 4 individuals, and though we covered 2 commissioners, we had.
You forgot to interrupt.
How could I forget? Yeah. Just like one might forget a French villa, I forgot the Morneau Report. Okay, well, certainly we've heard about all of the reports that have been issued under your tenure. I guess we'll see if any of that ethics training is taken up on, and if there's an arrest of the breaches of our ethics laws. What do you think the continued breaches of ethics laws did over your term to Canadians' confidence in our institution? Do you think that repeated offences or multiple breaches by one government, that instills confidence in the system by Canadians?
It obviously doesn't. There's no other possible answer.
Why?
There's a cumulative effect, and it's taking place also around other situations, having in other spheres of political life, if you wish, which I think overall, the surveys are clear. Overall, the confidence has gone down.
When we see the erosion of Canadians' confidence, they would expect traditionally ministerial accountability. These are the people who are covered by the Act. It's ministers or parliamentary secretaries. But we've seen 2 cases where we've seen promotion of people who are named, who have reports named for them. Minister LeBlanc and Speaker Fergus have both received promotions, which I would say does not serve to bolster Canadians' confidence in their democratic institutions. After the Ng report, Minister Ng came before the committee and said that she lacked training. She lacked an understanding, and that's why she broke that ethics law. How much training do you think is required for someone who is elected to office and then is given a position that makes them a designated public office holder, how much training do you think is required for them to understand that giving a government contract to a friend would be unethical?
An hour would be sufficient to cover that particular topic.
Okay. How much time do I have left, Chair?
7 seconds.
Well, I thank you very much, Commissioners, for being here.
You talked about that there are some people that take ethics very seriously, some who take it a lot less seriously. I would call that a bit of an elastic ethics. You had a lengthy career, 7 years? I left after 5 years for health reasons. Is there a profile of a person that would have a bit more of an elastic ethics? There are different personality types. Some people are very organized and some are not. Some people succeeded in doing whatever they wanted for their whole lives without any consequences.